Good evening, everyone. Doug Beck, president of JDL Ventures. We're primarily a wholesaling company. We're looking for our first fix and flip, but tonight I'll be talking about a deal that we did last year with a rehabber. It was a wholesale deal, and I'll tell you more about it. It was actually at 249 Cherry Valley Road in Montgomery, New Jersey. I know there's some folks in the room that might have seen this deal. It was sort of in my infancy as being a wholesaler, so I'll tell you more about that in a moment. So we're kind of on our agenda. I kind of went through what John was asking for as far as who am I, a little bit more about my background and why I'm doing real estate investing, finding the deal, the scope of work, the method of financing, some before and after pictures, an executive summary, similar to what Gabe had shown, and lessons learned, what went well, and words of wisdom. So who is Doug Beck? Actually, I'm a full-time IT professional in a large healthcare company. I can't really disclose the name just for sake of confidentiality, but if anybody wants to know, just come ask me. I've been working there for about 8 years. You can look me up on LinkedIn. You can probably put two and two together. But nonetheless, I'm doing real estate investing part-time right now, but it's more exciting than anything I've ever done before. I've been an entrepreneur since I was age 14, probably even earlier than that. I started off age 9 with a computer my dad brought home from his company, and I started tinkering with it. I got into IT from a very, very young age. I was doing computer programming, HTML website design. I was doing QuickBooks for people when I was 16 years old. So I've always been around entrepreneurship and such. I went to college to Rider University, graduated in 2007 with a double major in computer information systems and entrepreneurial studies. And so I really took a keen light on that, and I started a couple businesses. Currently operate 4 businesses in addition to my full-time job. Obviously, real estate investing is one. Website development. I also run an energy deregulation business. Some of you may know about that. And I also have a photography and DJing business. My wife is primarily the one running that, but I help out with the marketing. I also consult on 2 family-owned businesses. So my parents own a hair salon in Branchburg, and my father runs a short-term rental house down in Florida, down by Disney World. So I help out with the marketing again with that and business advice and whatnot. I kind of fell into real estate through Facebook in January of 2014. The guy over here to the right, some of you may know him or maybe not, but I want to give him credit because he's a big reason why I'm up here right now and why I've been able to build the business I've been able to build over the past year and a couple months. His name's Cody Sperber. He's a clever investor. I get no credit from shouting him out, but I wanted to do it because honestly, out of my heart, he's got a big heart himself, and out of my heart back to him, I owe him a lot of credit, like I said. I met him in Arizona about 8 months ago. Really kind of blew my mind when I first started working with the guy. A lot of companies out there, a lot of great companies that are teaching about real estate, but this guy is really a genuine guy. Met him, shook his hand. Him and his mentors. This is Franklin Cruz down here. He's out of Florida. He's my mentor. I know a couple folks in the room also have him as a person helping them build their business. And this is Cody's Phantom Rolls Royce, which is pretty awesome. I rode in the back of that car for the first time. Blown away, kind of like a reality check. Just the reason I mention that is not to impress you, but just to make you realize, like, when you start doing these things and put yourself around people that are super successful, you'll start finding that you'll become successful as well. So I'm blessed to have that. And most importantly, my why is this is my son, Jacob. He's 4. My wife, Dima, and this is my daughter, London. She's kind of crunched there. You can't really tell. She looks like a big blob of marshmallow, but she's cutest thing in the world. Love her, to death, and Jacob the same, my wife. But I've been married for about 6 years, so that's a little bit about who I am and my background. And I wanted to let you know because it's part of understanding what this is all about. So finding the deal. Again, coming from an IT background, technology is a big part of my business. So as many of you know, if you're on my list, you get a lot of emails and whatnot, but a lot of that's automated, things that I set up in advance, things that I have people helping me prepare. One of the things we used to find this particular deal was a Craigslist automation tool. And I can give you a whole hour-long presentation about how to set that up, but that's something I could definitely do, but not tonight. It's pretty interesting how it works. Craigslist is a very difficult place to play if you try to do automation, but we had it working at the time. It worked well and helped us find this deal. We then tied that Craigslist automation tool into a Podio, which is another technology tool. It's a CRM, for those of you who might have heard of it before. It's a free CRM tool you can use to manage your business. We use that in our business regularly, and that's, again, from Clever Investor, and those guys really talk a lot about systematizing and process, making things process-oriented in your business. So we had the seller actually fill out a small form, like a basic information form. Some of you may have this similar setup on your websites. And they filled out that form. It then triggered a lead on the phone from my partner, Ken, who's not here tonight. He actually got the lead, read through the information, pre-qualified it, and then called the guy back and said, hey, listen, we're interested in your property. Asked him some questions off of a script that we have. And then from there, he said, you know what, he didn't tell the seller, but he said to me, he called me up and said, hey, listen, I think we got a pretty good deal here. One of the things that I always tell anybody who works with me, Ken and other people that talk through leads, always ask about what you see right there, which is seller financing. So if anybody doesn't know what that is, again, I can't go into the whole details, but bottom line is it's going to help you finance a deal in certain situations, especially if you're an all cash, like your own money kind of cash buyer. If you have hard money lenders involved or other folks, it might be more difficult because of second lien position, first lien position. But in this particular case, I'll talk about how that worked out for us. The gentleman actually agreed he was open to the concept of seller financing. He was moving out of the state and he didn't really need the money right now. He had a nice retirement fund already set up. and he was open to the concept. So we read through all the information, did our comps analysis like everyone would do, and we actually made a verbal offer over the phone, sight unseen, because we knew the area, we did our comps, made that offer, and then we set an appointment to go see the property. Very typical process. Everyone that does wholesaling or has heard of this, probably even rehabbers do the same thing. Went to the property, talked to the seller, shook his hand, noticed that there was some additional work to be done, of course, like we always see, probably more repairs than the seller tells us on the phone, right? It's a pretty common thing. Downstairs in the basement, there was some water building up. We didn't understand why. It wasn't like standing water, but it was enough to where you saw it come up on the walls, and there was a little bit sitting on the floor. There was also a bunch of stuff in the basement that was just like almost like a hoarder's house in the basement, though. It was just ridiculous, and there was cats everywhere. It was really bad. So we ended up getting a price reduction. We negotiated, and we also agreed with the seller financing as far as the terms with that. And so I'll talk about the numbers in a moment. But nonetheless, I'll show you some pictures as well. The scope of work was pretty simple. It's updating the kitchen, standard stuff, upgrading the cabinets, changing around the arrangement a little bit, doing some new flooring, putting some new appliances in, updating the bathroom upstairs. Was already started to be updated, but the vanity was actually old. The person had done the rehab had started, or not the rehab, but the contractor that had done the project had just retiled the bathroom and reglazed the tub, but they didn't actually put in a new vanity, so it looked kind of like half done. And adding a bathroom, what I mean by that is it was actually a half bath downstairs, actually half a bathroom. There was the decision made to make the downstairs bath a full bath to make it more marketable, so you could sell it to an end buyer easier, and they have another shower to use, so that ended up working out pretty good. And refinishing the floor is a common thing, obviously refinishing the deck, so the outside deck was actually, some of it was falling apart, so the person that I ended up wholesaling a deal to, he's actually a member as well. He couldn't be here tonight. I wanted him to kind of be here as well, but unfortunately he couldn't. He said I can mention his name. It's actually Mike Capuzzo. If anybody knows Mike, he's the gentleman that actually bought this deal from us. He decided to actually replace a lot of the deck and just do it, refinish it, but also I think he replaced a lot of boards. Landscaping, general stuff, clean up and finish the basement, that was a big thing. So he actually finished the basement, looked really nice, and new furnace. So that's interesting. It's a seller gave credit because literally like the week before we were supposed to close, we had closing scheduled. He does not even the week, it was a week of closing, I think, like 2 days before the closing. Mike did his final walkthrough and finds out that the furnace isn't working. So now we call PSE&G because the guy has a worry-free contract. Long story short, it's like a $5,500 part or something, or $5,000 part that they need to replace it. He's like, you could either replace the part or potentially just replace the furnace. So he opted to just get the seller to give a credit. It was a negotiation. I gave up some of my fee to let that happen, but again, it was a business decision to get the deal done. We were already so far into it. The seller was actually going to walk away from the deal. I said, listen, you're going to start all over again. We've already marketed this deal for a couple months. There's no sense of doing that. Let's just get this done. Let's partner on this and let's get it done. So we ended up doing that. It worked out fine. The method of financing, again, I just want to make sure, I don't want to go too fast, but I just want to make sure I'm good on time. Wholesaling the deal to the cash buyer, right? So this was just a wholesale deal for us as far as our business goes. I actually had another wholesaler who also, I don't think he's in the room, Zach. If anybody knows Zach, he helped get the buyer engaged as well. So it was a co-wholesale that we worked together. A private lender came in, took the first lien position, and actually, again, towards the end of the deal, we actually had to negotiate with the seller. We had kind of planted a seed, like, would you consider doing seller financing? And then in the middle of the process, we realized that if there's another lender involved, you'd have the second and first lien position issue. So we actually planted the seed with them about halfway through getting it done, saying, hey, listen, would you consider taking a second lien position? Again, if that doesn't make sense to you, I'll explain it to you later, but it just means that there was two people involved with loans, and one has to get the first priority. If something goes wrong, the other person gets the second priority. He took the second lien position, which was phenomenal. We were very surprised about that. We thought that was going to be a deal breaker. So as you can see, the private lender took the first lien, funded about 35%, so not too much, but 100% of the rehab, and the seller held a note for about $185,000 on the property at 4% for up to 5 years. Up to 5 years because being that it was a rehab, we negotiated so it could either be potentially a cash flow property. You're not really going to do a cash flow in a single family necessarily, but you never know. So we negotiated just to be there, and also no prepayment penalty, which is important. So as the buyer ended up doing, he actually cashed out the seller early. So here's some before and after pictures. Mike did a great job. I want to give him credit. He definitely is a phenomenal rehabber. As you can see, that's the kitchen right there. Basic floors, the ceiling. You can see the spindles holding the cabinets up on top. Looks like it is a brand new kitchen, pretty much everything, floor to ceiling. And then you can see another angle of it he did some staging as well, so it came out really nice. The living room area, again, you can kind of see it's like an older, these folks were from like the 70s and 80s, like kind of hanging out with the carpets and the old, stuff in the house. So this is much nicer, brighter. You can see the flooring was redone, obviously. Again, staging, I think, did a lot for these pictures as well. So, John always talks about that. This is the basement. You kind of see all the stuff, and there's actually a cat right there, if you can see. So he's just hanging out, taking a look at the picture. He's famous now. I don't know his name, but Funny enough, we actually ended up cleaning out the basement. I paid a contractor or a guy, it was basically a handyman, to clean out the basement. It cost us like $500, but again, it got the deal done, right? So it made the place show a little bit nicer once we've realized that people were getting turned off by that because we had a lot of buyers come through. We ended up cleaning it out and I actually ended up selling the pool table, and I sold a couple other things. So from a perspective of whether you're a rehabber or you're a wholesaler, you might find gold in the basement of these houses that people don't want to clean out. So it's worth the effort. In fact, my family, my wife actually came over with my son. We had like a kind of an evening excursion in the basement one night, but then we realized it was too much for us. So yeah, anyway, that's a basement. You can see it's like, you can't really tell with this picture, but like sopping wet rug. It was really wet. We didn't know why. They ended up fixing that problem. I think it ended up being a small repair with the septic system that they fixed. And again, there's the finished product. Bathroom, so the angle's a little weird on this one, but you can kind of see this is the same bathroom with a different vanity and a new shower stall put in. And the toilet was actually moved. It was on this wall originally. He moved it over here. And down here, you can see it's kind of the same. You can't really see the tub, but it's basically the same tub with just, I think, a new floor he might have done. No, the floor was the same. He did a new vanity with a countertop and some new mirrors and whatnot. Not too much of an difference there. I put some links in there. I'm not going to show you links tonight. You can look at it if you get the presentation. Cash buyer paid about $292,500. Purchase price of $285,995 to the seller for his existing mortgage. He had about $95,000 mortgage on the property. So again, just because someone has a mortgage doesn't mean you can't offer or ask for seller financing. You can do partial seller financing. We ended up making it work out where 190 was actually 185, I should say, I think. Numbers might be off by a couple bucks. It kind of changed last minute because of the credit and whatnot. So nonetheless, we made about $7,500. Again, not a whole lot for us because we looked to make 5 to 10, plus we split that with somebody, and plus our cost. But at the end of the day, we got a deal done. It was one of our first deals. I started back in February, like I said, so relatively newer to it. And the cash buyer rehab for about $50K. I didn't have the exact numbers because I couldn't get a hold of Mike. He's on vacation. But nonetheless, he sold it to an buyer just this last month for $450. So he ended up grossing about over 100, probably netted around 60 or 70 with all of his costs and everything. Some of the lessons learned from me was that we should consider doing a project like this ourselves next time. So I was a little bit newer to the game and I was a little bit intimidated by the fact, but I even had my brother-in-law who's got some money to invest come to the property. He liked it, but a couple of things that were working against it was it had a shared driveway also, but it was on 2.2 acres, so it's a very large lot. It was also set back pretty far and had a lot of different things going on. So it was a little bit tricky of a deal. I think it might have been a complex. You might get overwhelmed with it if we did do it, but now knowing what I know today, I definitely would pick up a deal like this myself as my first rehab because of the seller financing and different things. And also non-refundable deposit. So a lot of people don't like to hear that if you're a buyer, but at the same time, there's really no deal until there's a non-refundable because there's no commitment to the deal. So it's more or less, I'm saying that as a lesson learned from a wholesaler perspective and also to kind of maybe put in a plug for wholesalers. Like if you're a buyer and you're looking for a deal from a wholesaler, be willing to commit $2,500 non-refundable or $1,000 non-refundable because it helps secure the deal and make sure that the actual buyer's, moving forward with the deal and the wholesaler is going to stop marketing or limit the marketing on the deal. What went well, finding the deal quickly and getting under contract quickly. Building rapport with the seller, this is very important. From start to finish, this is something that, again, it went well in terms of rapport, but it didn't go well from time frame. It took us about 5 months from the time we started, put this deal under contract to we actually closed. We got under contract, I think, in May of 2014. We closed in October, so about 5 months. Very long. Typically, from a wholesaler's perspective, you might have 6 to 8 weeks max from start to finish from when you actually identify a lead to you actually close, and that's even aggressive as far as length-wise. You usually have 4 to 6 weeks. So in this case, we were lucky in that respect. The guy was very willing to work with us. He was in a unique situation, negotiating seller financing terms and getting a lockbox on a property for showing. So being that this property was about 45 minutes from my house, going down every time and showing it would have been a problem. I did do that a couple times, but then we got a box on that. We had that in our contract with the seller. He agreed to it, so I talked to him about it. He said, no problem, it's no problem, we can do that. So we ended up doing that about a couple weeks into the deal and negotiating a second lien position. I want to give credit to Scott Pfeiffer, actually. He helped us get this deal done. So he was phenomenal as far as helping us negotiate, actually helping the buyer, really. He represented Mike on the deal, and he helped get this done. So definitely, the seller's attorney was not so responsive. So he definitely pushed her a lot. And words of wisdom, I use wholesalers to find deals, guys. So not to put any wholesaler, not just me, find anybody. The guys in the back, Flipping NJ, great guys. There's other wholesalers in the rooms. So it works, and we do, that's all we do day in and day out. We're not looking at properties to pick up right now, at least. I'm looking at just deals to give to buyers. I think like a buyer. I think about the numbers, and I try to find deals that make sense for my buyers and still make a little bit of money. Build lots of rapport with sellers. So always, my mentor always told me, build rapport first and then start talking about information about the property or negotiating. Don't even negotiate in the first call. Just get to basic information, build your rapport first. That came in real good for us at the end of the deal when we had some challenges. And then always present two options, an all cash offer or a seller finance offer. And you can even present three options, a partial seller finance or longer term seller finance or a short term seller finance. You know, we happen to do it where there's like a 5-year balloon. You could say 10 years paid in full, whatever, however you decide to make it work. Some of those work better for certain situations. And stay patient with wholesaling, because for me, it took us about 6 months to close our first deal. This wasn't our first deal that we closed, but from when I started in wholesaling in February, we closed our first deal August 28th. And that was actually a co-wholesale that we brought a buyer to. This one wasn't the first deal, but it still took us about 6 months. So if you're new at it, just keep going, keep pushing forward, stay focused. And don't get too excited until the deal actually closes, because we have so many occasions where we had a deal we thought was gonna be a deal, and it's in escrow with the buyer and everything, and something changes, something happens, falls through. So just, again, they kind of go hand in hand, be patient, but also stay on top of it, and don't get too excited. I think that's everything. Thank you for your time tonight.